Thanks for joining us at 7 o'clock. I'm Janice Rebholz. It is our wrap up of everything that's happening behind the courtroom doors in the murder trial of former Sangamon County Sheriff's Deputy Sean Grayson. Now, again, this happened in Sangamon County, but it was moved to Peoria in hopes of not getting a tainted jury. He's on trial for the shooting death of Sonia Massey in July of last year. We're finding out that a report filed by Grayson the night of that shooting leaves out some key points. We go to Liz Lape, who has been inside the Peoria County courtroom all week and last week as well.
The jury returned to the courtroom Monday to hear Sean Grayson testify on the stand on the night of that shooting, as well as hear the defense's witnesses during the sixth day of the murder trial. The defense brought multiple use of force experts to the stand who say Grayson was justified in using deadly force against Massey, arguing Massey was a threat to their safety. Ex-Deputy Sean Grayson took the stand and gave a polished, calm testimony. He said he responded to the prowler call in a high-crime area, finding Massey's car with smashed windows. He said Massey, disoriented, opened her door, saying, "Please don't hurt me." He claims because of the suspicious car, he chose to go inside to learn more and get her identification. Grayson then said he observed a pot of boiling water on the stove, and the situation escalated when Massey, wearing oven mitts, approached the pot, repeatedly proclaiming, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." After this, he and his partner, Deputy Farley, drew their weapons, and Grayson issued a verbal warning, saying Massey grabbed and started to throw the pot, leading him to fire. During cross-examination, however, prosecutor John Milheiser noted Grayson's report omitted a specific verbal warning and his intent to handcuff Massey. Deputy Jason Eccleston testified that Grayson was panicked post-shooting and admitted advising him not to speak or turn off his body camera. Defense use of force experts Glenn Corbett and Kevin Davis both concluded Grayson acted within policy. They argued Grayson needed to approach Massey for a line of sight of threat, and that her failure to put down the pot escalated the situation. Davis even called deadly force and a de-escalation technique when necessary. Milheiser challenged these experts, citing potential pro-police bias based on publications and video discrepancies. Closing arguments are expected to happen Tuesday, and the jury will then deliberate afterwards, which could take hours to days. In Peoria, Liz Lape, 25 News.
Liz, thank you. Now, they did predict that this trial could take about 2 weeks to finish, and it looks like they are following that timeline. If anything, it could be complete even sooner than that. Now, we do know that rallies have been happening outside of the courthouse almost every day, but from what we've seen, everyone has been peaceful and that everything has seemed to go along pretty smoothly. Now, we'll be back in the court again tomorrow with the latest.